Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special live stream. We are actually have an amazing live stream for y'all. My name is Jorge Gil. I am the person who's in charge of Dr. Heiser's social media. I've been for a while, I think going on 3 years, 4 years. And we all know that about a year ago we lost our great mentor, friend. Drina lost her husband. Their kids lost their father, and a lot of us lost a friend and a mentor. And in a way, we still being mentored by him. And our mission here at McLeod in the DRMSH community is to be able to continue this legacy and continue Mike's impact from here on to eternity. Now, he has relocated to the unseen realm. And what we want to do is we want to be able to make sure we want to be able to make sure that his impact is heard far and wide, not only here in the United States or abroad in the English language, but in as many languages as possible. Mike had a huge dream and a huge heart for evangelism. He knew that what he had rediscovered was actually the cornerstone for our biblical worldview. And what we want to do and what we want to share today is very, very important. So make sure that you don't go anywhere, because what we're going to be discussing today is going to blow your mind. Also, make sure that if you know some of your friends who are fellow Heiserites, to make sure that you tag them, share this video, leave comments, make sure that we spice up the algorithm so more people can see this. If you're watching on Twitter or X, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you share it onto your wall. Make sure you share it on every group. You share it in the DZW group, share it in the Naked Bible group, share it everywhere where Mike's followers and disciples are, please. Also, make sure that you tag people on YouTube and that you let everybody know if you use WhatsApp or Signal or any other, if you use WhatsApp or Signal or any other platform, that we'll be able to get this out to more people. So we are actually streaming directly from a very special place, and I'm not going to say from where. I'm going to let the person who's going to introduce the amazing news tell us that. But we're also going to have various guests, special guests here, and we got an incredible announcement today that you're going to be able to stay up at night consuming the material that we're going to be sharing with you, and it's absolutely free, and all the new and amazing changes that are going to be happening here. So without further ado, actually, you guys didn't came here to see me. I know that you guys see me sometimes when we do the Logos live streams, because we want to make sure that you guys have the best tools for Bible study, okay? But before I introduced the people who are actually going to lead this live stream, I want to make sure to let me know where you're watching from and how did you learn about Mike's work. So right now, go ahead on, pick up your phone or pick up your keyboard and type in the comment section. Where did you find Mike? How did you find Mike? And where are you from right now? Because what we want to do is we want to make sure that when we look back at the chat, we are able to pinpoint where you guys are, and hopefully, because we're going to have some crazy announcements. You guys have no idea, okay? And even though we're still heavy-hearted because we don't have Mike with us, there's a lot of amazing things that we're going to be doing to honor him. And without further ado, I am actually going to bring in Drina, Heiser, and Ron, Dr. Ron Johnson. But Drina is going to take the stand right now, and she's going to give us a little bit of news for you. Drina?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it so much. We are actually sitting in the Florida home that Mike and I bought together 4 years ago, and the home that he passed away in just a year ago. So we're sitting in our living room, and I just thought it was the perfect place to have this live stream go live and deliver some news to you guys. First, I want to tell you a little story. When Mike was battling cancer, he was really concerned about me, and then me knowing how to log into the bank accounts and to handle all the stuff that he did on a daily basis. And so he put all these documents together and put it in a file named Drina and put it on my desktop on my laptop. Well, I didn't have the heart to open any of that, and so I just left it go for a while. And after he had passed for a couple of months, I thought that I could kind of handle opening it up, and so I did. And there were several documents in there, but there was one called McLot, and as you know, that was the nonprofit that Mike started probably 6 years ago now. And it was a platform that he could develop content and deliver it to the world in different languages, and just, you know, that was his passion. So he wanted to be able to do that. So in the document, it said, Drina, you know, you don't have to worry about McLot, just let it go, and it'll eventually, you know, go away, and, you know, just don't worry about that. That's just one thing I want to, you know, take off the table for you and off your plate. And I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to let that go. And so I was thinking, you know, I'm not a content creator and I can't do that, but what can I do to further Mike's legacy and honor him? And so I talked with some of the board members of McLot, and we decided to kind of like rebrand or restructure the whole nonprofit, because, you know, I'm not a content creator, but what can I do? And so we came up with the name Michael S. Heiser Foundation, and it is legally now that in the state of Florida, so, and that's where we are incorporated. So it is the Michael S. Heiser Foundation, and it is going to serve as the big umbrella that all these other little things are going to fall under. So saying that, I want to address Naked Bible podcast. We've had a lot of chatter about that, and I know everybody is kind of curious about what's going on there. And the Naked Bible podcast was really Mike's thing. It was a way that he could study and create content and then bring it to everyone that wanted to listen to it. So it really was his thing. And so now that we don't have Mike as the scholar leading that, we decided it'd be a great idea to start another podcast that is in the same vein. It's going to bring good theological content. It's going to be, it's called the Divine Counsel Worldview Podcast. And what better person to host that was Mike's, or is Mike's, long friend of 40 years, and you all know him. It's Ron Johnson, and he's sitting here to my left today. And he's going to go ahead and tell you about his vision. And Mike Chu is also, everybody knows who he is that follows the the Divine Counsel Worldview Facebook group. He's the admin there. And so they are a great team. They have great chemistry together. They know each other, and they both love the scripture and have dedicated their lives to the scripture. And my husband trusted these two guys implicitly. So Ron, do you want to talk a little bit about the podcast?
And, you know, as you describe it, Drina, I'm humbled by the idea of continuing what Mike started. I'm not replacing him at all, and everyone knows that, but it's a great honor and privilege to be heading into that space of careful Bible study that's conversational in nature. It's meant for the layman, but it's also meant for the person who wants to be careful about how they study their Bible, and especially when it comes to the divine counsel concepts and the worldview that it encompasses. So My partner is Mike Chu. I'm so glad. In fact, I don't remember how this started, where I had in my mind, boy, if I could get anyone to be a co-host, it would be Mike Chu, but I'm sure he's unavailable. And I think you mentioned just go ahead and ask him, and I did, and he said yes. So we're going to bring Mike into our conversation shortly here as well. But that first podcast is coming out soon, and we're going to be dropping basically one a week, and we're going to start in Genesis and work our way through the text, much like Mike did. So it's in the
Mike
spirit
never did Genesis, which is
Right.
so surprising to me.
Isn't it though? Yeah,
Because
yeah.
Genesis was his book, right?
Right.
And so he
why-
never did. So Ron, you get
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, and it's a thrill. Thank you.
There you go.
So I hope that people will take it in that spirit. They always say, don't do your first podcast. I always start with your second because it's much better. So we're going to shoot for the stars. And again, in the spirit of what Mike would do, like you said, he was my conversation partner since 1981, which is after the Civil War for you young kids, but it's a long time ago. And Mike and I, for years, I mean, whether it be in person or by email or phone call, we just talked all the time. And we went through a lot of the Divine Council discovery phases together. And we would bounce ideas off each other. And we didn't always agree, but that's the beauty of Mike. He had a way to disagree so gracefully, so kindly, and yet so powerfully that it was just such a joy. So I miss him intently, and we'll do our best to keep the spirit of Mike going in the Divine Council Worldview podcast. Very basic name, but I think it grabs the idea of what we're out to do.
Do you have an idea of what you want to do after Genesis?
I have no
Have
idea.
You thought it? A little bit.
And didn't
No,
Mike?
there's like 65 other viable.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only 65 other books, but didn't Mike often let the audience recommend a book?
Oh, yeah.
Right, right.
Yep.
Yeah, that was his
So-
thing. Yeah.
So you guys can be excited about that. Be
Yeah.
thinking about that
And-
because
and do some
we
Q&As
do
and
take
things like that.
we do take you into consideration for sure.
Yeah. So
All right.
thank you. It's my privilege to be a part of that, and can't wait.
Ron, well, I actually want to share with you guys a few things here because the audience is already going online and looking for the Divine Council
Okay.
Worldview podcast, and people are finding the podcast. I didn't even have time to paste the link so people can go actually indirectly and see it, but I'm actually going to post it on the comment section. But what I want to do right now, how about we bring Mike Chu in.
Call.
So go ahead on and call Mike, because what we're going to do is they are going to be able to listen to Mike on a phone, and then you guys are going to be able to listen to Mike here on the stream. So we're actually, for the older folk, we're actually putting together a MacGyver to make sure that we can make it work. So we're going to bring Mike in. Let's see if Mike going to pick up the phone. Mike, we're calling you. Do you have Mike now?
We got Mike.
All right, so let me go ahead on and bring in Mike Chu. Let's see if I'm allowed to bring in Mike Chu now. And let's see if we can bring Mike into. So Mike is, let me see. Mike, can you hear us?
Hey guys. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I think the audience is able to hear you as well, Mike. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make you bigger. I think flip you around, because right now you are the small screen. I don't know how to switch it right now. Let me see if there's a way. Picture in picture. Well, people can see you, Mike. Go ahead on and have a conversation. Tell us a little bit about your participation with Dr. Ron on the Divine Council Worldview podcast, while I actually paste the official link onto the comment section.
So yeah, Mike, go ahead and tell the story. I guess picking it up when I asked you if you'd be willing to be my co-host on the podcast. What was your thought, and what was your decision there?
Well, so I knew that there were talks about starting up a podcast to sort of succeed after Naked Bible podcasts, and I was under the impression it was only going to be Ron. And for folks who are trying to understand, like, why did Ron say that? I possibly could have been busy. A lot had happened that year as well for me. And one of those things was I was graduating from Gordon Conwell with my MDiv. I was going to start a Doctor of Ministry program. and I had also accepted the academic director position at Dr. Heiser's school, Awakening School of Theology. And so I had already a lot of things I was juggling, and so I was just looking forward to when Ron was going to be starting this podcast. And the thing that really surprised me was just that you asked me, Ron, and I was really just honored. I wanted to take some time, really honestly, just so I could, one, process, and also talk it over with my wife, because at the same time, she usually is very involved with my decisions, especially anything that was related to this. And um, I don't think I even waited a day. It just really just made sense. She just simply asked, did I want to do this? And did I want to help out? And I wanted to. We've been having conversations just because of your work with the School of Theology, and I know you probably don't remember it, but I remember trying to talk with you at the second Naked Bible podcast, not Naked Bible conference years ago, and I was
Okay.
so astonished by kind of just the material you brought up on about atonement. But I also know there were like at least 50 other people who are like all swarfing around you and trying to get your attention. And so we never got a chance to really have a deeper conversation. And so just the prospect of actually having more conversations with you, that was the biggest appeal to me. And I was really honored by it.
And likewise, I appreciate your work, and we've already recorded a couple episodes, and honestly, what's happened, and I think this happens whenever you're with a good conversation partner, is you have these off-air conversations, and when we realize, let's save this for the podcast. This is what we're trying to do. So that's what we're doing so far. I've had a great time doing it, and I hope people enjoy it. Again, in the spirit of our great friend and mentor, Mike, whom we miss, but yeah, I look forward to it.
Guys, so we're going to go to the next place. And thank you, Mike. What we're going to do, Mike, is what I'm going to ask you to do is mute yourself on the phone, so don't hang up. And then I'm going to mute you on the stream, so you don't have to mute yourself. And then whenever we ask you a question, I will bring you back in, because the way we brought you into the stream doesn't allow me to take the echo off. So we're gonna try to, if you're like me and you have ADHD, you're like 40 years old and you have ADHD, so the echo drives you crazy. I know a lot of people on the other side of the screen is like, man, this echo. So we're gonna try to keep the echo to the minimum, but we do want to hear what Mike Chu has to say. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep it to a minimum, but we're gonna allow him to stick around, because Mike Chu is a very important piece in this new legacy projects that we have going on. So now we talked about the change in Miglot. We're actually turning Miglot into the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. And one of the things that we want to make sure that you do is that you continue to help and support the RMSH until we make the official switch regarding the website and all of these other things. The drmsh.com website is going to stay up. All of Mike's works and all of Mike's blogs and all of that stuff that he created over all of these years still going to remain, but we're going to give it a facelift. So we need your support for that. So make sure that you go to Miglot and you donate there. We will announce when the new website is up. And remember that the official podcast is the Divine Counsel Worldview podcast. And that's a shame, man. I'm the person that produced the podcast and makes the podcast, and I can't even get the name right. But I'm sure that you will get the name right, and you're gonna remember this awesome podcast. So right now, I want to give the microphone back to Ron, and I'm gonna have Ron introduce our new friend here, Mel. So Ron.
Yes, part of the podcast rhythm will be to include Mel, a good friend of Mike's. So in fact, I'd like you to tell your story quickly of how you know Mike. And Mike Chu and I will be doing many of the podcasts, but every now and then you'll see Mel produce one as well. And go ahead and tell us what you're going to be doing that's different from what Mike and I are doing. When it comes to the academic stuff, what part are
Yeah.
you going to play in the podcast?
Yeah. So I think, as a lot of you guys are probably used to, Mike's podcasts were, do a lot of teaching, but then he'd oftentimes bring in a guest and he'd interview a guest, and then he'd do Q&As. And I always liked all of them. I really liked the Q&As because a lot of people from the audience would ask questions that I had myself. Sometimes he answered some of my questions, but I kind of had the inside track. So I'm like, hey, Mike, maybe you can answer this one next time. But I'm going to do the part where we kind of interview people. But it's going to be a little different. I'm going to leave the scholarly interviews to you and Mike Chu, and I'm going to let you guys, handle the heavy lift. But I think there's another aspect to this that we've all kind of talked with Drina about, and kind of the vision for taking this forward. And this is really going to be kind of a continuation of what Mike actually wanted to. And so let me go through kind of a few notes. And I had such a long stream of thought here. I needed to organize it. So forgive me if I kind of venture this way. So, Mike gave us a lot of information regarding the narratives that are going on in the Bible, that have been hidden to our 21st century mind. But he's unlocked a great deal of understanding in the Bible for that. And so a lot of this stuff, as we know, it's not necessarily salvation related. It's just kind of great information and great context. And I know for me personally, it's just really given me a greater, deeper appreciation for Scripture,
Right.
and for the depth of it, and for the message that it's sending, and the cohesiveness throughout it. And so a lot of us have been virtually sitting at the feet of Mike, over the years, just absorbing all this new information, and a lot of us undoubtedly have probably been trying to unlearn some of maybe the denominational things, or just previous assumptions that we've had about Scripture, just based on the English reading of it, or whatever language you're reading. And so a lot of us have been doing that. But this is the interesting thing. This is where our separation is, that having knowledge in and of itself, that's not the end goal. Mike's been doing a great job with that, and we've all been learning a great deal, but that's not the destination. Likewise, let's say engineers that go to school for a long time to learn all the math and various concepts that go into building structures. If an engineer merely goes to school and just learns about building bridges in theory, but never actually does it, that engineer is useless. And so we need bridges. We need engineers that build bridges. And so for a long time, we've been sitting and learning how to build bridges. And a lot of you guys have been learning how to build bridges, and you're getting pretty darn technical at your bridge building. But it's like, what do we do with that now? What do we do with all this knowledge? And so the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking to people, interviewing people that have kind of learned this content and have kind of really absorbed it, and how they've taken that content and they're going out into the world and they're engaging the world. How they're using this to kind of engage in really thought-provoking conversations. How it's helping them engage in believers and unbelievers alike. And then how some of them are even going to foreign countries and engaging people that people groups that understand there is a divine council. They don't know it as the divine council, but they understand that there is a realm of lesser gods that are probably being worshipped over there. And how to do that. So we want to kind of, through these conversations, we want to kind of give you guys just individual ideas of how you can use your skill set, how you can use the unique place where God has put you to kind of engage your world. And then what kind of nuggets of truth can you drop into people's lives that are around you? you know. And sometimes it's going to be a big nugget. Sometimes you're going to drop a big rock in front of them. And sometimes you're just going to put a stone in their shoe and just make them walk on it for a while, you know.
Well,
So-
what Mike was good about saying and reminding us as we listened to him was that God is winning in the sense that even though as Christians we often feel like we're in the minority, or that our message isn't being heard, or there's defeat around every corner, God is winning. Otherwise, he's not God.
Yeah.
And so he was good at reminding us that, and so I'm excited to hear what you find, what you come up with, where you see Mike's ministry, you know, showing up around the world that we never expected. That, and I'm hearing stories all the time of that. So,
And we're
glad
going
to have
to
you.
be reaching out to people. Some of those of you in the audience that have been listening
Yeah.
and reading his books, we've heard stories. Like we've already heard some stories come in of how people are engaging this in other countries, and it's quite unique. And so we want to hear from some of you, because it may be one of you that, you know, we're reaching out to talk to.
And maybe this would be a good thing to pursue, and that is the question which a lot of people have asked over the years: how do I talk to my pastor about this without sounding like I'm
I've joined
joining
a
a cult? Things like that. You know, that very practical. And I felt this as my own ministry in various ways. How do you talk about this stuff and come across normal?
Yeah.
That's our goal, because this is, in my mind, mainstream Christianity that was forgotten. And as Mike and I both agreed when we were going through all this, we're not creating anything. We're rediscovering
Pretty much.
what I think the text has been saying. So that's, again, why I'm excited to hear from your side of the podcast is, so how is it working for you? How can we help you, again, the audience, how can we help you make this normal enough that your spouse, your pastor, whatever, looks at you normally, even though you believe what Mike's trying to say? So I've spent years trying to figure that out, because it is normal. I'm a regular Christian guy who believes, well, just like Mike, I believe the text,
Yeah.
but when you start talking the text, you can be misunderstood.
So easily. Yeah, it is. We have to, and that's kind of what his like Unseen Realm book was all about, was kind of recovering that supernatural worldview.
Right.
I mean, if you believe in a virgin birth, if you believe in a resurrection of Jesus Christ, if you believe in like these foundational things, that like his ministry of also raising people from the dead, healing the sick, making the lame walk, like healing lepers, he was doing supernatural things in his day.
Right.
Why did that have to cease? And why does the ideas of that are kind of coming through other places in the Bible have to be so strange?
Right.
If we can believe in these other normal things, like why does that need to be
Why do we need to recover a supernatural worldview?
when it's already there?
It's
in
almost
plain reading?
oxymoronic to say to recover,
Yeah.
and that's the whole point. I mean,
Exactly.
and Mike was good at saying if it's weird, it's normal, or how's
If
it
it's
go?
if it's weird, it's important.
It's important, yeah. And
Yeah.
okay, I can see where and maybe that could be overstated here and there, but the point is, the Bible is weird.
Yeah.
And so those who try to make it normal and palpable to the average audience without taking these texts into account, I think are doing a disservice to the Bible. So that's what this is all about, just bringing the Bible back to the world of the average reader who can do it on their own, but they need a little help, and that's what we're glad to help
Absolutely.
with. So.
If I can interrupt here, it's along the same line, but when we lived in Wisconsin, I was part of a vibrant homeschool community. And so about a month ago, one of the gals that I homeschooled my kids with sent me a picture of her Sunday school class, and it was packed. And every one of them had the Unseen Realm on their lap with a syllabus that the teacher had created. Their own syllabus to go through the Unseen Realm. And so I'll get you that guy's email, that
Yeah,
pastor. But
that'd be awesome.
And that's
I
the
was
story
like
I wanna
blown
hear.
away. I was like, wow, that's so cool, you know? Yeah.
It's such a, and I guess for people that haven't really fully digested it, like when you're kind of telling them about it, yeah, number one, they think you've probably joined a cult. And then number two, there's just this like, for the person it has unlocked, it is just such an awakening moment, because I've been in church all my life, and I was to a point where it's like you can't preach a sermon that I haven't heard,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
in 4 or 5 different ways, you know, and I was okay. I could still learn. I'd still like absorb things and pick up things for myself. But then when I heard this, the first time I heard it, and the first time I heard Mike, I didn't know him yet, was I heard him on someone else's podcast, and what he spoke, it was just so matter of fact, but it was so grounded in kind of knowledge and research, and he referenced so many other things. I just knew like this is it, and it just kind of, and I just started looking for him just about everywhere I could. It's just such a revolutionary moment for someone that already thinks they know and understand the scripture, when you can unlock so much more of this.
And part of the purpose of the podcast, again, is both to honor Mike's legacy, but also to draw in a person who maybe doesn't understand a divine counsel worldview, or they know it really well, and they may differ on some of the specifics that Mike believed. Because again, every theologian is allowed to have their idiosyncratic views of anything. And so what we want to do on the podcast is kind of draw in the net and say, so what does a divine counsel worldview include, and where can we even disagree among ourselves on some specifics? Because I think it's an important thing to welcome in people who may not agree on this, that, and the other, but they understand the bigger point.
Yeah.
And so that's a large or a major purpose of the podcast, is to always think in broad terms. What does a divine counsel worldview necessitate in this text here? And where can you go, like a domino trail, where could you go on 2 or 3 different directions and still come back in the end to to agree on the main point? So we do spend our time so far in Genesis. That's what we're doing, is just walking verse by verse, saying, well, here's what an Elohim is, and here's what the image of God in man would include. But you can disagree, on certain specifics, and that's what I love about having Mike along, because we don't rehearse before we start the podcast where we disagree. It comes up in the flow of the moment, but we again have this conversation through it, and we realize here's where my view would go, and here's where your view would go, and here's where we come back together. So that's I think part of the goal there, to welcome in even people who don't agree on all the specifics, because if everyone in the room agrees, somebody's not thinking usually. So
And
that's
that
the
was
fun part.
that was the real beauty of Mike Heiser, was he welcomed that
Yeah.
discussion and that debate. I mean, he didn't want to debate people
He didn't want to debate. In fact,
professionally,
yeah,
but
he
he-
refused debates, as I
Right.
remember him.
because he didn't want. But he would welcome all of those different hard questions that would challenge him a little bit.
Yeah.
And he would welcome, because he wasn't,
But not
afraid
that
of-
Mike didn't have his views. I mean, Mike
Right.
was certain on certain things, and he taught it, which we expect our teachers to do, right? But we also appreciate when that teacher backs off and says, "Well, that's my view, but you're welcome to. Here's what would happen if you took that view. Here's where it would go," and sometimes it's certainly viable. So that'll be part of the podcast too.
Well, and I appreciate that part of the podcast, because for a long time, Mike has been about the only voice that we've had on these kind of topics, until you kind of came along, and he'd kind of bring in other scholars to kind of augment some of these things, to kind of also say, hey, because Mike always said, I didn't create this stuff. He says, I'm literally just drawing. He said, I'm connecting different data points,
Yep.
and I'm just cohesively putting it together and laying it out. And I agree. I was, like so many of us, I think we were really frustrated when Mike died, because we're like, no, he was just like the lone voice out there kind of beating this drum, and it made so much sense for us. We're like, no, I don't want that drum to stop beating,
Which might be a good time to bring up then, Adrena, what you discovered, after Mike's passing, a half of a book that he wanted to finish, but
Yes.
where's that gonna, go ahead and tell the story of that.
Yes. So the podcast really isn't a passion of mine, and so that is something that I was just really glad to hand off to you guys. But one of the passions of mine is publishing, actually, and finding more authors that kind of have the divine counsel worldview, but that can write a book that's different. And so what happened was Mike was trying to finish some books before he passed, and he had this doctrine book that he really wanted to get done, but he finished about 6 chapters, as I remember, but had a lot of notes as well, research notes that he was putting together. And so I was like, well, there's half of this book. I'm like, Mike, did you get this book done? He's like, no, I didn't. I won't be able to get it done. And he knew that. And so I had all this information of, part of a manuscript and all these study notes. And I was like, well, it needs to get done. And so I didn't want to ask Ron because you're already doing stuff. And so I'm like, but I need to ask Ron because Ron's the only one that can follow Mike's thought process and where Mike was going. He understood Mike's research method. You understood Mike's theology. And so I asked Ron, and to my great joy, he didn't even hesitate. He said, yeah,
Well, it turned out that
I'll help finish it.
We had talked about this, and I taught undergraduate Christian theology for about 20 years, beside Mike and also parallel to Mike. And so at one point, this was before he got ill, he said, your theology notes, are they ready to be published, or could you turn them into a book? Because he knew that they were based on a divine counsel worldview. And we're talking about the doctrine of God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, man, sin, salvation, church, last things, and all that stuff. That goes into a systematic theology book. The divine counsel world, or the unseen realm, is a theological book, but it's not a systematic theology book. It's just not the purpose of it. So Mike knew there was this lacuna, this big hole in the theological world of a systematic theology based on this worldview. So like I say, he asked me, and I said, let me look. And I went paging through my stuff, and it just wasn't good enough. It just was, it needed a lot of updating. And I told him that, well, I could start working on it. Well, then Mike got sick. And so when you told me that he had finished these 6 chapters, of course, my intent all along was to hopefully help him do that and be part of that project, but now it was an obvious yes, and so that's in the works now, and we have an aggressive timeline. We're going to try to get that out. So
yes, because I know everyone's hungry for
yeah.
Something, but what is your idea? Like, what flavor or how do you want the book to read for the
It's going to
the
be
readers?
unique, very unique, because I'm talking with my, as I called him, my greatest theological conversation partner, but he's not alive. So I have this material. I have his thoughts in my head. I've got his books. I've got his YouTubes. And so what I'm going to do, this is going to be different. I'm going to be creating a theology book that is a conversation with 2 people, one who's living and one who's not, back and forth through the work of Mike and through my thoughts. So it's going to, I don't know how it's going to sound, but that's the goal. And by God's providence, I think that's a wise. It's an interesting idea that God apparently wants to happen, where it's not just Mike writing a theology. It's 2 people who knew each other but didn't always agree on all the parts. And this will be, for me, the joy of what we would often find ourselves doing, like at an ETS conference, where I would room with him, he would room with me, and the lights would be off. We'd be, laying in separate beds, staring at the ceiling in the dark, talking about, wouldn't you guess, divine counsel stuff, and either agreeing or making fun of each other for the views that we didn't have, and Mike was great about this. He would, that great laugh.
Yes.
And he would say, oh yeah, you have that weird view of, and he'd laugh. And, but I knew whenever he laughed, he was taking me seriously, and I appreciated that. And so that's what the book will be, is two guys who have been through this for 40 years. He did a lot of the heavy lifting. I mean, I'm amazed at his productivity, and I'm going to try to honor that and finish the work, I guess, that Mike started.
And everybody that knows Mike and's ever been to a conference, he was very conversational. He always had time to answer a question.
Oh, yeah.
He would stand, I would have to go get him and physically remove him to go eat something, during breaks. He was very conversational. He was not afraid of that. He loved it, actually.
Right.
I mean, he was an introvert, but he loved talking to people. And you guys both have experienced that, and so I think the book will be a really good honor to that, that aspect of Mike. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great to get that variety, because as I was saying, like we've only heard him for a while, and so it's going to be great to have you and Mike Chu, and then bring some other people.
Yeah.
And as I think we're starting to see the beginnings of some kind of acceptance, or like the understanding the relevancy of this information, like as it pertains to just biblical teaching, just
Yeah.
like Sunday morning teaching.
And Mike was not about a new denomination or a new
Yeah.
creed. He
Yeah.
was wanting to mainstream
Yeah.
this stuff.
It should be mainstream.
That's- that was
This
our-
is not a new denomination. This is
Right.
not any of that. It's just like, you need more. You need to add some better math to your equations.
Right. Yeah.
So for Micklot Press, this will be our first book that we do, and I'm excited about it. But we are going to accept book proposals, and we have a whole team that will look through the proposal and see if this is something that Mike would be interested in,
Yep.
and that would kind of fall along the lines of a point of view or just a way of incorporating, what Mike already started. So we're going to be looking for that, and we welcome that. So it'll be exciting. Yeah. So, well, going back to the podcast, you're going to also be doing Q&As as well.
Yep.
And so it'll be kind of be like people, is it going to be like, because this is will it be a live Q&A or will people submit?
That's up to Jorge.
questions?
So
whether
let me
you can-
interject real quick. So a part of what we're doing, and I know a lot of you guys, so I want to just take a breather because I know everybody's talking, and there's 17,000 comments coming in at me all at once. Everybody has questions, so let's just go ahead and take it one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. So what I want to share with you guys is something that's very simple. So we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So all the questions that you have about how often we're going to post the Divine Counsel Worldview podcast, questions about, what about the Naked Bible podcast, what about Trey, all these things. We're going to leave those questions for the end. I know some of you guys are asking, hey, we need some closure. We need to know some things here and there. We're going to try to do it the best way we can. Also, you guys need to understand that we have live interactions in the DRMSH community. We have the Daily Dose of Bible that Dr. Ron does every week. We have new videos coming up 2-3 times a day. All you have to do is go to drmsh.com and then sign up for the DRMSH community. That will help us continue this. We have not only these projects, but we're actually going to be looking at some of the other initiatives that we're going to have and some things related to conferences, related to trips, related to a bunch of other stuff that we want to share. So this is not just about the Divine Counsel Worldview podcast. This is not just about the transition that we're doing regarding the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. This is actually a whole I will say, restructuring in order to be able to utilize the wealth of riches that Dr. Heiser left us, right? We are supposed to be able to make disciples, not just believers. And the work that Mike laid the foundation for is for us to continue to build on that discipleship. So please, for all of you guys who are on the other side of the screen, we are going to be answering questions at the end, and we're going to be teaching you how to ask your questions properly, okay? So let's go ahead on and withhold our opinions until the end so we can actually have a wonderful time here, because we're putting in a lot of work to make sure that we continue doing what God has called us to do. Make Lot, the Michael S. Heiser Foundation, and all of this is way bigger than all of us in this room and all of y'all on the other side of the screen. You know, this is kingdom-minded ministry. And we're doing this in order to have an eternal impact. And at the end of the day, it's not to make Mike famous. It's not to make Ron famous. It's not to make me famous. It's to make King Jesus famous. And we're going to keep the main thing, and that is the main thing. So now we're going to move forward to talk a bit more about the ideas that you guys have, or the future projects that are coming up. So thank you guys on the other side of the screen, and I just want to let you guys know that, because I know some of you guys are a little anxious, but we promise you that we're going to get to your questions, okay? So back to y'all.
When I was talking about the Q&As, I was kind of talking about the podcast Q&As. And I didn't know if that was going to be submitted questions that you guys
Yet to be
would
determined,
pick?
I don't know.
Or, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Jorge and I will talk through
Right.
that and
Okay.
do that.
And Mike Chu actually, you know, and then it could be both and, right? We can actually bring in questions via an email, right? We're going to have an official email, and we also can ask questions or give priority to the questions that come through the DRMSH community, because the DRMSH community is the community of people that help us make this happen. So that's part of the perks of being part of the DRMSH community. And we can do an occasional Q&A live across the Dr. Heiser's social media platforms like we're doing right now. So it can be both and. It doesn't have to be just one or the other, but we do want to make sure that we get to your questions, not only on the podcast, during the podcast, but also here on this live stream.
Mel, did you have anything else you wanted to add about your podcast and what you want to accomplish with that? And
Well, we've had a lot of conversations past day, past 24 hours, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, excitement and ideas, and I think God's given us some of these ideas. He's kind of put it in your heart, and apparently some of the things that we're kind of talking about, they're resonating with both of us. And so some of the things we're looking at doing is even like using the Miklot Press and some of the books that Mike has made free, like What Does God Want? Or Supernatural, and the various languages that they are, is at some point in the future, maybe we are going to interview people in these foreign countries that have taken it to their group. Like I know of some groups of people that have taken some of his books and have literally handed them out to the members of that church group and said, you're going to translate chapter 1, you're going to translate chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. And they're doing that to some of the really difficult stuff. And but they found it so beneficial and so impactful that it, I think that's great. And then we had a guy recently that he was going to Nepal, and he wanted to take some What Does God Want in Nepalese.
Right.
Over there, and so it's like we want to kind of capitalize on some of those things, and so in some cases we may be equipping people with some of these things to go, and hopefully maybe in the future we're also the one doing these things, because there's just so much going on. And I'm gonna give some credit to one of my buddies, Rich Baker, who was one of Mike's best friends and kind of ministry partners for a long time. And Rich has helped me out incredibly over the past year, just different conversations. And Rich would just inundate me with books. He was like, you need to know. He said, you don't need to go to seminary. You need to read this book, and this book. And so he gave me one. And so he gave me this one. Do you guys mind if I read a couple
Oh, no.
excerpts out
Go
of it?
ahead.
Because I was telling him I want to talk about this book because it was so cool. So this is a book called Eternity in Their Hearts by Don Richardson. And he takes these different stories of missionaries that have gone to different parts of the world, like in the 1800s, 1900s, and even some stories as far back as like Viracocha in like ancient Peru, and some of the things that he did. And so it's basically like these missionaries would go to these countries thinking that they're bringing in the gospel for the very first time. But apparently when they meet these people groups, it's like they're primed and they're ready. Obviously, this isn't the case all the time. We know
Right.
we've heard the other stories, right?
Right.
But in some cases, it's like they were primed and ready. And so there's this one story. I'm just going to read you like 2 really short paragraphs from this. It was a Norwegian missionary named Lars Skrefrud. Sorry, Norwegians, if I butchered that. I'm doing my best. But him and another gentleman, they went to this people group in India, living just in the northern region of Calcutta. There were a people group called the Santal people. And Lars spent time learning their language. He spent a lot of time learning their language, and he apparently was very gifted at learning the languages and absorbed it pretty quickly. And so I'm going to pick up in kind of the middle of the story. To Lars's utter amazement, the Santal were electrified almost at once by the gospel message. At length he heard Santal sages, including one named Kolian, exclaimed, "What this stranger is saying must mean that Thakur Jiu had not forgotten about us after all this time." Now Lars caught his breath in astonishment. Thakur was a Santal word meaning genuine, and Jiu meant God. The genuine God. Clearly, Lars was not introducing a new concept by talking about one supreme God. Santal sages politely brushed aside the terminology that he had been using for God and insisted that Thakur Jiu was the right name to use. That name, obviously, had been on Santal lips for a very long time. "How do you know about Thakur Jiu?" Skrefgrud asked. That's Lars, a little disappointed. "Our forefathers knew him long ago," the Santal replied, beaming. And there's just they have this historic lore of knowing about the unseen God that you could not make an idol of, that loved them in the beginning, and they had a relationship with, and that they had separated from him long ago. But they had stories that some people were going to bring them a book and explain Thakur Jiu back to them. And it's stories like this, and there's several others. There's even one of the early missionaries, Christian missionaries, that brought the gospel to the Koreans, and they had a name for him named the Hananim. And it was the same thing. It was the same type story. They knew who he was, but the missionaries just had to adjust their mindset of not calling them, say, Yahweh or Jehovah, these biblical Jewish names that we're kind of used to.
Oh, yeah.
But they listened to the description of him,
Yeah.
to the description, the qualities of who this person was, and they're like, wait, this sounds like the Hananim. As soon as they could kind of relate to the Koreans on the level of, okay, let me see this last line they said. Then he commissioned messengers bearing good news of redemption to all peoples, calling all people to repentance and faith in the name of Jesus, son of Hananim. And it's like, I feel like that's where we need to go with this kind of, you know. That's kind of the ultimate impact. And even Mike's biggest saying, and I'd never really heard this because I'd always heard the greatest spiritual weapon we have is prayer. And we all just kind of instinctively go, oh yeah, of course, it's prayer. But Mike said the greatest weapon of spiritual warfare is making disciples of others. Because it's no longer just me praying, but now I've taken another person, I've recruited him as an additional imager of God. And now there's no longer just one person, there's two people praying. And let's extrapolate that out further and further and further. That's the point of this.
That's great.
That's where I think we want to go.
That is where we want to go. And honestly, before Mike got sick, we're turning our focus more off of, Mike's teaching and maybe doing more kingdom work through the nonprofit. And we had talked about mission trips, offering a mission trip that would be different, one that we would organize ourselves and actually go into these places that have already, taken some of these books and then work more with the people there, and that we would take our own team that you all could participate in that. So I'm excited that maybe, we could do that and you could be, one of the leaders for that. And because we talked about that before he passed, years before he passed. So another thing we want to do, and Mike and you talked extensively about doing Israel study trips.
Yeah, again,
So
before he
maybe-
got ill, it was.
So this is in the future, but this is in our minds. It's not going to be this year, obviously.
Yeah, and what would be the value of a study trip to Israel is that no one has ever done a divine council study trip to Israel, where we stop at all the biblical sites. This isn't just for souvenirs, and going to churches. It's going to Ai and Bethel and talking about what happened here as a divine council discussion would ensue. This is the spot, that the wrestling with God happened and those kind of things. So much of Israel, and I've been there numerous times myself, are itching to be defined through a divine council story, going across the Sea of Galilee and talking about what it meant for Jesus to calm the waves. I mean, that's a divine council discussion. So anyway, that's in the future. Obviously, right now is a dangerous time, but in the near future, be ready to hear about a divine council study tour to Israel.
That'd be so cool.
So just to give a quick summary of what we've been doing here, so we introduced the Divine Counsel Worldview podcast. You can go and find it across all the podcatchers. It's in Apple. Soon it's going to be in Spotify. It's going to be in Google Podcasts. It's going to be on Amazon Music. It's going to be on Audible. So you can go and look for the Divine Counsel Worldview podcast. We're also going to be having a Q&A at the end to try to answer all your questions. We'll also been talking about the change going from Make-A-Lot to the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. And we also talked about the Big Lot Press, where we're going to be publishing some of the works that Mike was working on before he went to the unseen realm. So we're talking about this Israel teaching trip with the Divine Counsel Worldview focus. And also we were about to go and discuss, I have it here on my notes, maybe an idea to do some DCW conferences. I know that in the DCW Facebook group, which is the official group of Dr. Michael Heiser's Facebook page, there have been conversations about a Divine Counsel Worldview conference, and we are thinking about making that a reality. And let's remember that what we're doing, and I know I read the comments and I don't want to comment about the comments right now, but a lot of you guys are hungry and a lot of you guys are confused. So our goal is to be able to give you guys what you need so you can continue to grow in your knowledge of God. Remember that that's what you were made for. You were made to know God and to make Him known. And our goal here at the Michael S. Heiser Foundation is to give you the tools that you do just that. So why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about the DCW conference and some of the things that we have in mind, and also some of the ideas, Mel, that you have about doing these mission trips and what that's going to look like to be able to get people the resources that Mike created in other languages in their native language. So let's start with the conference, and then we can move on to the missions as well.
The conference will be similar to past ones that Mike has done. the Naked Bible Conference, we had that. The Divine Council Worldview Conference will be sort of similar. We haven't really thought about the logistics of all that yet. I'm working on finding a location that would be central and be a beautiful place for people to come. And then we would have to get scholars and, kind of like vet papers, kind of like a ETS in a way.
Yep.
So it wouldn't be just scholars that Mike always invited these people, but it would be more of a submitting a paper or a talk, and then the foundation would vet that and then pick some. So it's going to be different, in a way, because Mike didn't know everybody that is out there writing papers or doing research on the stuff that he was interested in. So we'll put the message out and hopefully get some good papers, and then we'll meet new people who are actually doing work that Mike would have loved to read about. And so it'll be different from the Naked Bible Conference in that way. So it's just a thought, and that would be next year as well, but I think it would be a great thing to bring like-minded people together. So
It'd be fun.
But by the way, I do want to say something before we move on to so we can talk. Mel can tell us a little bit about the mission idea, the books, and the distribution. I want to let everybody know that, Drina, you are now the president and the director of the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. And I want to make sure that everybody on the other side know that we're doing this, in order to continue Mike's legacy, right? This is not something, and for all of you guys that are coming in late, you guys can rewind. We're not going to repeat everything that we have said. But the gist of it is that we're doing this because we want to continue Mike's legacy, and because we see the value in furthering the mission and the mission that Mike had, the vision that Mike had, and that this is being done with your blessing, Drina. That this is not something that a couple of guys got together and said, hey, let's just go ahead on and do this or do that. No, this has been planned, and we've been working for a year or so, right, to make sure that we continue to do this. And again, at the end of the day, is to honor Mike's memory and to bring glory to God. So that's the goal. So we're doing this with your blessing, and then you're absolutely involved in everything that we're doing here.
that's right.
So Mel, tell us a little bit about how can we go global?
Yeah. Well, and I guess, to build on what you just said, we kind of for up a bit of it. So the foundation, even though it's named foundation, it's still a 501c3. It's still like it's still a nonprofit, just so people understand.
Yes, it is, right. We got okay from the lawyer, had to do a little bit of research on that area because the names were thrown around, Michael S. Heiser Institute, and I didn't feel good about that because we're not teaching people, really. That's not the focus anymore. And then there was the Michael S. Heiser Ministries, and I didn't, anybody can start a ministry, and I didn't. So I really fought for the name foundation, and so the lawyers went about it thinking it doesn't operate as a real foundation, but they got the okay that it can be called a foundation.
Yeah.
But it is still a nonprofit.
Yeah, it's still a nonprofit.
And we don't operate like a foundation. We don't take in money and then distribute it. It's still a nonprofit. Yeah.
And and I guess just for the sake of, for people's understanding, it's like our idea here is not to split the people of God and stuff like that. Like we've wanted to carry, Mike's desire was not necessarily for Mike's legacy to go forward for the sake of Mike so that Mike will be remembered. We remember Mike because he was a lovely guy. He was a funny guy and a great guy. That's why you hear us talking about him. We're not trying to make him some kind of icon. He's not, we're not trying to create some new denomination here. Again, this is just a profound appreciation for the work he's done. And so one of the things I want to say is, and Mike would say this too. You know, if you're getting fed somewhere else, go there and get fed. Go there. Just like Mike said, people would ask him, "What Bible should I read?" And he said, "What Bible will you continue to read? Like what version?" He's like, "Whatever version works for you. If the King James version works for you, do that." That's all that matters here. Like, we're not here to be popular. Like, I don't care about that. And so, and even for this, like this is just kind of coming up. This is from 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 11. This is Paul writing, "For it has been reported to me by Chloe's people that there is quarreling among you, my brothers. What I mean is that each one of you says, 'I follow Paul,' or 'I follow Apollos,' or 'I follow Cephas,' or 'I follow Christ.' Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you, or were you baptized in the name of Paul? I thank God that I baptized none of you except for Crispus and Gaius." Anyway, the point being, we're not trying to do any kind of division. We're not trying to create different followings. Go where you're going to get fed. That's what I would encourage you. Go where you're going to get fed. I guess to kind of pivot back to the missions thing, like what's our idea? It's, you know, we're in the very, very early stages of talking about this, and it's less. Well, I think we're just going to kind of go where kind of God leads us to. I think God will kind of open doors, and He's going to lead us in certain areas. And you know, man has plans, and God has His plans, and you know, we're just going to kind of move in the direction that He leads us. And because whichever way He's leading us, that's where the power is, that's where the blessing is. And if we're moving in God's direction, in the way He's leading us, we are invincible. It doesn't mean we're going to not, come across adversity. But we are, as long as we're in the middle of His will, we are invincible. Because He is going to make sure that gets accomplished.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we're going to move. And if we're going to help another group kind of get started and help broaden them, maybe if it's teaching, maybe if it's some kind of outreach, maybe if it's engaging a people group that we think, hey, we could potentially be able to speak some kind of relevancy in some manner that they're like, oh, really, that's interesting. I heard a story recently where there was a guy that was talking to a people group, and he just wasn't getting anywhere. And then when he remembered some of this teaching, he says, you know, you have all those other gods. And they're like, yeah. They're like, okay, well, this God, He was in the beginning, and He was over all of those gods. He presided over all of them, and He was the one that was above all of them. And He's the one that created all this stuff and gave them and allowed them to have their rule. And when those people heard that, it suddenly unlocked something in them, and they were able to now engage with Him in conversation. And so it's things like that. It's just maybe new ways of thinking about things. It's going to be, for a lot of people, it's going to be outside of the box of what's been the norm for them. Because quite frankly, a lot of this information is outside of the box for all of us. So.
Yeah, and you know, the Lord will open doors and lead. I mean, my whole marriage with Mike was, you know, miracle after miracle, and God opening doors and closing doors that we thought would be good for us, you know. And even with the foundation, I am good at ideas. I'm a visionary, but I don't have the tools to really, you know, do that. But I'm good at bringing people together as well. And I prayed about it, and you know, He's just brought a good team together that I trust, and Mike trusted, and so we're going to carry on.
That's right, guys. So for everybody who is at the other side of the screen, again, you know, this is a stream, it's not a pond. So for all the new people that are joining right now, we're talking about the new Divine Counsel Worldview podcast. We're talking about the name change from Miglot to the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. We're talking about all the new projects, the new books that are going to come out through Miglot Press. We're talking about the proposed ideas to do an Israel and Paul study trip from a Divine Council worldview. We're talking about the mission trips to bring the materials that Dr. Heiser created and made available in other languages to these native speakers. We're also talking about a DCW conference. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to open up for questions, right? So we're going to bring in Mike Chu, who is the co-host of Divine Council Worldview podcast. So the one thing that I want you to do, and this is, I want you to, I do a lot of Q&As. I do a lot of streaming, and one of the things that I need you to do, so pay attention, because if not, your question is going to get ignored. I mean, it's that simple. So number one, you need to type the word question in all caps so I can actually identify it and save it into the question box. Okay. Number two, ask a question, not a series of questions in one comment. A question, one question per comment. All right, and make sure that your question is not a dissertation. That make sure that it's you're not writing 3 paragraphs and disguise it as a question. Okay. Last but not least, you already see I'm not a native English speaker, so I have an accent. So if I have an accent and you have bad grammar, doesn't work well. So make sure that you write it properly. Make sure you use good grammar, or you will not get picked on the thing. And make sure that you just don't write one word, okay? Because I don't know, I mean, I've been trying to read my wife's mind for years. Haven't been able to achieve it yet. I'm not going to read yours. Probably don't want to read yours. So make sure that you are eloquent in writing your questions, because there are dumb questions. I know a lot of people say there's no dumb questions. There are really dumb questions. Okay, so make sure that you follow my rules, and then I'll pick your questions. So let's go ahead on and bring Mike. And again, this is going to bring a little bit of echo, but we can work through it. All right. So I'm just going to ahead and bring everybody onto the screen now. You guys are going to hear me in the back. And so with that being said, we have some questions here. Let's see. Okay, so where can I get that hat? That's Jeff Miller's question, and I know he's been asking since the beginning. So this is actually a special hat that I created. I remember I have this logo. I got this logo from the Awakening School of Theology. I asked permission to the people at the Awakening School of Theology, and actually I asked Mike if it was okay to make this hat. And I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, no, you shouldn't put a Heiserite over there. Me and Mike had a lot of chuckles regarding this whole terminology of Heiserite, because it's just light, it's fun. It's not like we're creating a cult after Mike. Again, I just told you guys that this is about Jesus, right? But we can have fun. Me and Mike were good friends, and I know that he's looking down from heaven and still having that signature chuckle when he see me wearing a Heiserite hat. So please, all of you guys who are really angry because, oh no, all the ites were bad people. Well, not the Heiserites. You know, we actually breaking them all, okay? So these are special hats. We might, and then again, I'm going to say something, and you guys probably not going to like it. A lot of people is like, oh, now everything is monetized. Well, if you don't realize that you need money to do ministry, you probably never done ministry, okay? So when we put something, okay, there's no such thing as a free lunch, all right? I actually come from a third world country, right? So I've been down there, and I know how it works. So what you need to understand is that these resources cost. And for us to be able to produce these resources, there is a manufacturing cost. So the reason why we don't have hats out there is because 2 things. Number 1, it's expensive, and number 2, we have people on the other side of the screen that are going to complain about, oh, you guys are profiting of Mike's likeness, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully we're going to be able to make some hats available for you in the future for the true Heiserites, though. So that is my answer for that. And then again, again, guys, we want to make sure that we have freedom in Christ, okay? And we have to be able to behave in that way. So let's see, next question. Okay, So this one, it says, I would love to see Dr. Heiser's dissertation published. Is that something that we can make happen? Anybody?
Well, anything's possible.
Right.
It's a very technical paper, so it's not like reading The Unseen Realm. But Mike never really had it published, right? No,
He didn't
No.
try.
no, yeah. So
It's a
know.
conversation we can have. I mean,
We
you
can-
you can
right.
self-publish those. It costs
right,
money.
right,
Right.
You basically have to buy every one of them.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
when you publish it that way, but
Yeah.
you can do it.
All right.
And
So I got really nice question from Marianne. It says, how are you doing, Drina? So we know that it's been a year. So they asking you, how are you doing? So give them an answer.
Losing Mike the way I did is a little bit different than losing a loved one suddenly. It was 2 years of grief. It was 2 years of trauma. It was 2 years of fear. And so at the end, it was, and I hate to even say this, but it was a relief for him to go home and see Jesus because it was just so traumatizing. And so I feel like my family and I really, really did the grieving while he was sick. After he passed, it was sad, of course, and I had terrible days, but honestly, it has been okay, and I know it's my faith in God. I know that God had a purpose for Mike, and he had a purpose in his death, and and I'm not saying, that gives me total comfort, but it has comforted me. And there is a peace that passes understanding. You don't know that until you go through it. But I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. And I'm going on with life. And hopefully this is a way that keeps me connected to Mike and keeps me remembering his legacy, and that's really the reason I'm doing it. It's a labor of love, and
Yeah.
there were 4 things that Mike really cared about when he was in hospice, and it was his kids, his library, his pugs, and his legacy, and those were the 4 things that I really focus on. His whole library went to Shepherd Seminary in North Carolina. And his library was so good that it is better than Duke's library. And so they're building a new library, and they're going to have a Michael S. Heiser section at Shepherd Seminary. And they're going to have a lot of his books won't be able to be checked out. That's how valuable and special his library was.
Excellent.
Yeah. And so the pugs, of course, I take care of. The kids are fine. They are, our family has become closer. And of course, they want to take care of their mom. And that's been a beautiful thing to see. And then his legacy, which I'm really trying to work on.
The best thing a man, and thank you.
Yeah, go.
And I only add this because I think of Mike and our personal conversations where I knew how much he loved you. I mean, he wouldn't. There are things he said to me where I think, I hope Drina realizes how dear you are to him. And also, I think of, well, Mel and you and I both would say this, that the best thing we can do for our family is prepare for our own death well. And Mike did.
He did.
So I can see why you're doing okay
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. I really appreciate people thinking of me and wondering how I'm doing. I'm doing well, thank you.
I do want to bring Mike Chu. Mike said he wants to give a little bit of context on the dissertation publication for
Okay,
Mike's dissertation.
good.
So go ahead on and take it over, Mike.
Well, I just want to bring up. I know there are some folks who are wondering or are
Was he
claiming that they
muted
do
there?
have a copy
Oh,
of.
he muted his phone. So it's okay, Mike. The audience can hear you.
So that I know there are some folks who are saying they have a copy, and that is a partial copy of his dissertation. The reason why it was mentioned earlier that it wasn't published, it was never published in a peer-reviewed journal. It was never actually put there so that it could actually be vetted completely. But if people are really interested in what the content of the dissertation was, then ultimately what you actually find is the distilled version, and the version that ultimately is what people are probably will most benefit from is the Unseen Realm book. It is one of those questions I remember once asking Mike about, and he put a lot of time and effort into the Unseen Realm and later the Supernatural book. And so if folks are just wanting to dig down more, begin there. And I would really recommend folks take the time to read through the footnotes, go through the material. That was ultimately what led me on my own journey into theological education, because I realized as I was reading both Supernatural and then later Unseen Realm, wow, I actually could understand this, and not just understand the main text, but I was so fascinated by the research and the material that he was citing and bringing up, and that I wanted to look up who these people were. And so I think that is a challenge. If you want to dig down, that's a great place to begin. It doesn't have to be immediately right into the deep end of the pool with his full-on dissertation, because I would love it too if it ever gets published in a printable form. But I think for what we have right now, Unseen Realm, Supernatural, start there. And you will just
Yeah.
be amazed at how much you'll actually learn and understand just from going over that material.
And then probably progressing to reversing Herma,
Yeah.
which is kind of built
Yeah.
upon.
Built upon that, yeah. So that's great wisdom there, Mike. Thank you so much. I do have a few questions. We have a lot, so we do want to run. We want to respect everybody's time, and I know that you guys on the audience are hungry, so we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. So I'm going to try to do a little bit of rapid fire here. We have, when do you anticipate the podcast being available on multiple platforms? It should be out on Apple, Spotify. It takes a little longer because of Spotify you have to authorize it twice to make sure that he posts. Make sure it's not just a bot posting a podcast. So Spotify is going to take a couple of extra days. It should be on Google Podcasts. Google Podcasts have a different crawler, meaning that Google Podcasts it's not like you submit it and they pick it up. They pick it up once other podcatchers have picked it up. But it's already on the Apple Podcast, and you can just search it. Go to your favorite podcatcher or podcast app. That's the way that non-technical way to call it, and then you will be able to just find the Divine Counsel Worldview podcast, and you will see it there. Noble asks how to contact the guest and host. Can you post their emails? Not yet. What you need to do is you need to listen to the podcast, and then in the podcast we are going to give you the email or the contact form so you can actually reach out to the host and the guest. And actually, if you're part of the DRMSH community, you can reach out to Ron and Mike right there. Let's see. We have another question. Will the third novel be produced? And I don't know the
I
answer.
have an update for that.
Okay.
In going through Mike's computer, backtrack. There's this journalist, world award-winning journalist that has written for all kinds of magazines and newspapers. He is a follower of Mike's. He's a Christian, and he reached out to me about, maybe 8 months ago, and said, I've read The Facade, I've read The Portent, and I know that there's a third novel. I would like to take a crack at it, like if Mike left notes. So I was like, that's interesting. So I had him send me some writing samples and stuff that we could read. So then I was going through Mike's computer, and lo and behold, I found all of his notes and on the third novel, and he actually wrote probably 12 chapters of the novel. So he started it actually. And so I'm in talks with this gentleman who's really wants to do it. and I will be sending him all of Mike's notes, and we will hopefully be publishing that next year. And we will be getting the rights back from the publisher that has it now, and we'll be rebranding it and selling
Beautiful.
it as a as a trilogy. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That is awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, guys, we continue. We got to do rapid fire because we have so many questions here. Timothy asked, hey, I give monthly to Miklat. Will I have to make any changes once the name is changed?
Yes.
Okay.
You and actually you can do that now. You can make it. I assume he's doing it through check.
Through check or, yeah. That will be for
PayPal
him.
will automatically, go
Yeah,
over,
switch it.
but
Yeah.
but you'll make it out to Michael S. Heiser Foundation.
Okay, excellent. Next question. How can my wife and I support this new podcast endeavor financially? Through the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. You can right now go through the Still Miklat website. There is a form there for you to support. And we are going to be working on updating all these websites. So we're going to give it a facelift. So really, guys, this that we're doing, we're putting a ton of time, effort, and resources behind it. And that's what we need you to help us out, right? So you can just go there. Rachel Hicks is very sweet. She says, you sound like a native English speaker. Thank you so much. But I'm not. Okay. So let's see. That was a great question from Jack and everybody else who wants to support us right now. We have, let's see, more questions. Okay. So this is one question. It says, question. And this is and guys, so I'm going to put the wide thing, and I'm actually going to bring Mike Chu, because this is something that we need to address. And I think there's not going to be any better time, because we're moving forward with all of this updates, and we're moving forward with all these initiatives, God permit, and we want to make sure that you guys have some clarity and transparency in what we're saying. So there's a question here. And it says, will Trey be helping out in any parts of the ministry? And actually, I'm just going to put, because I'm going to be able to answer this as objectively as possible. And the question is no. The Dr. Michael S. Heiser Foundation, it is not directly linked to the Naked Bible podcast or Trey. Okay. And we're not going to go into details, but what we're going to let you guys know is that we do appreciate all the hard work that was put into the Naked Bible podcast and all the support that was given while the Naked Bible podcast was being produced. But the Naked Bible podcast is not part of the legacy initiatives. The Naked Bible podcast had his own life, and I assume his own lifespan. And that's why we are actually diverting the resources to these new initiatives, because then again, we don't have Mike with us anymore, right? So I cannot speak for Trey. I cannot speak for what his plans are. But here at the Michael S. Heiser Foundation, we're focusing on all the projects that we mentioned beforehand. So if you missed some of the news that we share here on this live stream, you can go back. This stream will be saved, so you can go back and you can hear all the awesome news. But that is my 2 cents on it. I don't know if you guys want to share your perspective. So, okay. So that's all I can say about that. And I think that will help y'all understand a little bit more about the way that we're moving forward. And then again, we're just saying, we were just telling you what we're doing here. We cannot speak for what's happening with the Naked Bible podcast. Okay, let's see. We have another question here. What type of books will be accepted for the foundation? I don't know if I understand that question. I have another question. Martin asks, will Memra Online continue to be accessible?
Gosh, we have talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that was Mike's pet project, and he facilitated that himself. It was directed by him. He did all the grading or whatever himself. It was his little side project. So we're trying to figure out a way to use that. To be honest, I haven't had the brain power to really go into all these other things that Mike had available, but hopefully we will figure it out. And it is on my mind. It is not forefront in my mind right now, but I know a lot of people have asked about that. So we will consider trying to repurpose that in a way that we can do it since we don't have Mike.
Yeah. Mike Chu wants to share something also related to the Naked Bible podcast question. So Mike, go ahead on and you can go ahead on and participate.
I think, as much as that we can say, I think just for clarity, I think this was something that I was surprised of years ago when I discovered it. But Naked Bible Podcast and McClot, that is now known as the Dr. S. Heiser Foundation, they actually were never connected. They essentially were side by side projects that Mike had worked on, but they were never actually under the same umbrella. They were not connected. And so I think, this is to clarify for folks that this is not a severing. They actually never were connected together. And so this is part of the reason why a lot of times when Mike worked on things, it was through the McClot Foundation or, through McClot before the name change. And so that's just to help clarify for some folks. It isn't that however we want to describe it, they were never actually together in one organization. They were actually two projects that Mike was working on very generously in two different ways. And so I just want to bring some clarity. It was part of my surprise, but that was just the reality of how it was in the past.
Well, thank you for that clarification, Mike. We definitely needed it. There's another question related to this, and is, will the content of the Naked Bible podcast will remain up? Well, that's our hope and prayer, that this content will remain up. Actually, for many of you, you guys might not know, but the reason why I have this hat and I've called myself a Heiserite, because when I discovered the Naked Bible podcast, as many of you know, it changed my life. It changed my theology. It changed my relationship with God. It changed my love for Jesus. It changed the way that I see my mission. And I was addicted to the Naked Bible podcast to a degree that I will listen to 2 or 3 episodes a day so I could catch up, and I will listen to 1.5 and 2x, and then whenever I got to meet Mike in person, I will tell Mike, hey, you speak too slow, man, because I was so used to him speaking so fast on the podcast. So I actually listened to the whole thing once, and I'm about a third into listening to it again, and I use it for reference. Is it amazing? There is no other resource like it to this day. And I know those are very big shoes to fill when it comes to the Divine Counselor Worldview podcast. But guys, our hope and prayer is that the Naked Bible podcast will remain up, and we're going to do everything that we can do to make sure that is the case, because that content, it is invaluable. That we cannot let that podcast not be available. So that is our hope. So that's pretty much as we can say regarding that. But that is our hope and prayer, that this will be the case, because we all still continue. Actually, I remember I got these headphones that I can use underwater, and because I have back problems, I actually swim with this headphones on, and guess what's on my memory inside these headphones? Like hundreds of episodes of the Naked Bible podcast that I use, iTunes, to download them and put them there. So our hope is that, yes, that the Naked Bible podcast is going to stay up, as far as we know. Okay, so let's move on to another question right now. Let's say, is there a way, Ruth Gonzalez says, to get What Does God Want and Supernatural printed in paperback book in Spanish. It will help so much when engaging to my Spanish family and friends. So Ruth, let me go ahead on and answer that question for you. So, and this is something that I text Drina and Mel and Ron and Mike the other day, and it was that I just did a live stream in a channel with a Argentinian YouTuber. He has 1.2 million subscribers on YouTube, and I think 1.5 million subscribers on Facebook. And we went over Dr. Heiser's documentary on the aliens documentary, the Logos documentary, and in the last 3 days, I've probably given away about 1,200 copies of What Does God Want and the Supernatural book, all on digital. But that's one of the things that I want to do. I want to be able to figure out a way to get those books back in print. And then one of the reasons why we are here right now, all of us are here in this room, is to be able to continue to coordinate and to make that happen. So just stay tuned. You can follow me across all of my platforms. They are. You can go to Yo Soy Jorge Gil on Instagram and send me a message, or you can just go to es.crossexamined.org. That's our Spanish site, and then from there you can find my contact information, and I can send you this. But the idea is to have these resources available in all languages, whether it's digital or in print. That is the bottom line of what Mel is going to be doing regarding missions. Latin America, Europe, you're talking about Asia. That's what we want to do. So that's an answer to that. And we might have an answer to that in a week or two, or maybe shorter, maybe longer. We don't know. But if you continue to follow this channel and you continue to follow what we're doing with the Michael S. Heiser Foundation, you will know where to get those resources in Spanish. Let's see. Can we still access his previous podcast transcripts? Yeah, the transcripts is still available. Let's see what else. And actually, if you're part of the DCW group, there is a document with all the transcripts. I think one of the podcast listeners actually downloaded all the transcripts and created a unified document, searchable PDF document that you can actually download for free. So if you are not part of the Divine Council Worldview Facebook group, make sure that you go ahead on and join. Mike, you want to share a little bit of that about that document while I find the next question?
Can you repeat the question again?
You unmute yourself on the phone so the rest of us can hear you.
Okay. Oh, Jorge, can you repeat the question just so I make sure I answer it correctly?
So the question was related about the Naked Bible podcast transcripts, if they're still available. And what I was sharing was that there was a listener that actually compiled all the transcripts and created one unified document that is searchable.
Yes, that person had posted it inside the DCW Facebook group. It's actually in our file archives there. I'm sure if we repost it again, people will be able to download it. I have a copy of it. It's a massive document, however. I will warn folks. It is huge. You can still access the transcripts, from what I understand, from the Naked Bible podcast website. However, there is a weird quirk about it. You actually have to click inside each episode to download the proper transcript for the episode, because if you just download the link that's on the main page, for some reason it's always off by one. So you could do it that way too, or eventually you can download it as a giant document from this one member in our community group on Facebook who decided to go through all 456 episodes and download every single PDF and then created it as one giant Word and then PDF file.
Yeah, that's a labor of love. That's a lot of work. So we do thank you. So make sure this is another incentive
Gilligan's
for you.
Island reruns, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love people like this. This is why this group of people is so cool, and this is why I love being part of this, is because like people that get a hold of really good content and realize the value of it, they're all in.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
I love you guys. That's why I'm here, and that's why I want
absolutely. So, Ron, this question is for you. when will the first episode of the Divine Counsel Worldview podcast will be available?
It's out now.
It's out now, baby. Yes.
Mic drop.
Just go anywhere podcasts are available, so search for it, and it's sure to be already up there. Okay, so we have another. Okay, people are just going crazy about getting the third installment of the novel.
I was too.
I'm going to tell you
I
guys.
was hounding Mike about it. Every time I talk to him,
Right.
hey, it's number 3.
I want to tell you guys, like, I get to cheat because I get to see all the beautiful love from the community right here on the chat, and then hear all these awesome answers and stories. So this is just great. I'm definitely blessed to be able to be part of this awesome group here. Let's see, more questions. There's just so many. I have to. Okay. This is a good question. When I buy one of Mike's books on Amazon, does this benefit the foundation, or should I purchase his work somewhere else that it will directly fund the foundation? So I will say the books through, let's say, Amazon or Logos, there is, I don't know what kind of royalty deal there is. I do know that the best way to help the foundation is to go directly to the foundation and donate that way. And Drina, what are your thoughts on that?
Royalties are great. Most of his books are not royalty driven because they were written while Mike was at Logos, so that was part of his salary. So, you know, you can buy them. They're not really a benefit financially to me or my family. Of course, they're a benefit to you with your, you learning, what Mike has written. So, that's a yes and no question. Some are and some aren't. So if you want to directly help the foundation, buying the books isn't going to do that right now until we get McLeod Press going. If you want to donate, just go directly to the foundation or mclot.org right now until we change it over. That would be the best way.
Okay, let's see. There's just so many great comments. I want to read them all. Let's see. Question. So this is probably a question for me, guys. It says, any thoughts on training an AI chatbot with Dr. Heiser's documents and books, podcasts, etc.? So that's one of the things that, I'm an early adapter when it comes to technology. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here today and producing the live stream is I have a company called Worldview Media, and this is what we do. We help scholars like Mike in organizations that are focused on theology, philosophy, and apologetics to be able to get this content and make it available in spread it across the digital world. So we are using several AI models to be able to deliver this content in a way that is safe and responsible. Also, we have talked about Mike has so much, he produced so much content for the website, so many of the series that he did on, for example, free will and determinism, in a series that he did on, the unseen realm and all of this stuff, they were never turned into video or audio content. Then now with AI, we can actually move towards that goal. I don't know when that's going to happen, but we have the tools, and it's definitely it's going to happen. We're going to invest in time and efforts to make it happen. I just don't know when. And then again, at the end of the day, we got to get Drina's blessing to move forward officially with it. But believe me, we are looking into it because we want to make sure that it's searchable, and is also the next generation are not going to sit down and read 20 blogs about one topic. But if we can create a dynamic explanatory video about it, for example, like the Bible Project, right? The next generation, and those are the ones that we need to disciple, right? So that is the goal. The goal is to be able to get these resources using some of these AI tools that we have now. And I think that Logos is doing a great job Logos is doing a great job integrating AI into all their um, uh, uh, what do you call it? Search engines, right? So that's pretty good. Okay. Okay. So we have another question. It says, what project is Dr. Halstead and Carmen Imes working on? If not, how will you use them? So um, the idea with the podcast, and this is for Mike. Mike, you can come in and run, and then in Mel, if you wanna pitch in as well. You know, how we're gonna work this. You know, because we still want to further relationships with all of these scholars, right? That have a DCW bent, right? Because those are the ones pioneering. Actually, I want to give a shout out to our wonderful friend from Charlotte, North Carolina, Muramali. He's been just commenting and just being so excited about this. And I know that he sat at Mike's feet and did his dissertation. I think he was overseen by Mike. So,
Yep.
you know, this is part of what we want to do. We want to make sure that everybody who's building on Mike's work have an opportunity and a platform doing this. So,
Yeah, the goal of the podcast would be to include scholars like Carmen and Matthew, and so that's the hope. So, as you listen to the podcast, you will be hearing from people like that. So,
And
I know
also,
Carmen's schedule's really full.
Right.
So we need to get her on.
well, we talked to her about things, and yeah,
Yeah.
she's very scheduled out and almost a year out. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
getting
and
there-
she's teaching full time at Biola too. So that
yeah.
you have to take that into consideration as well.
right.
yeah, and
We
Carmen
have
specifically has also some interesting upcoming projects. I can't say anything about else more about that, but yes, she is a very busy woman, and she's been helping us out also with the Awakening School of Theology. So even just those moments that we're able to have her come on board are just precious. And so yeah, Ron and I are we already have ideas of other scholars that we want to bring in, and there's an interview that will be coming up that I personally have been looking forward to, just having that release. And so, yeah, we are going to be bringing folks in that also have dealt with materials and intersected with Mike's scholarship as well.
Mike Chu, I was wondering if you could update our listeners or viewers about the Seminary on a Flash Drive initiative. I know that that's almost done. Could you update us a little bit on it?
So the seminary on a thumb drive, this was an idea that Dr. Heiser had before he passed away. It was this concept of providing seminary level training and content, especially materials on doctrines and other scholarly materials that he knows was very hard for folks to access if they are in regions where they can't go to a seminary easily or a Bible college, even not even something that was accessible via online in a lot of ways. And so his dream was to actually produce 12 courses that we could provide for free to especially folks who are coming in from regions that are hard to access or hard to receive this kind of biblical content and training. And so we have been working on creating these classes that Dr. Heiser had kind of dreamed up of. He had a proposed order, and we have filmed over half of the courses already. They are in process and already being released. The official name for it is called the Pastoral Initiative because it's mainly focused on and geared towards folks who are in ministry, who are pastors and taking care of congregations in their own regions and in their territories. For folks here in the U.S. and also in other Western, more Western historical Christian societies, we're hoping that folks who are coming from more affluent areas, especially, they will sign up for these courses, pay for the courses, and in that process, the funds that are being collected for that are going to help create the ability to have a specialized area for folks who are coming from those regions who can't receive that seminary level kind of training to be able to access these courses for free. And so as you guys help out with the the Michael S. Foundation and also with Awakening School of Theology, your like, essentially your purchasing of these courses and donations will help with this initiative. And this was a dream that Mike always had, was that we would make disciples and the Great Commission would continue to go forward. And so that can be done in, especially in how we train and how we prepare ministers and pastors to actually carry on the work of the Great Commission to their own people groups, to their own heart languages of all those who are around them. And it's a great privilege to be able to provide this kind of training.
And
Thank you.
to even build upon that, some of the conversations that myself and Mike Heiser's good buddy Rich Baker, who's now my good buddy, some of the things that the conversations we've had with another individual are taking that information and putting it on like a Raspberry Pi type computer, Wi-Fi server of sorts, dropping that on there and taking that to like remote areas and dropping it, not dropping it, but giving it to them as a training. So they'll basically plug it in, it starts broadcasting the Wi-Fi, and all these people that are coming and get the training, they connect their mobile devices.
They'll create a hub, yeah.
It becomes a hub. They connect their mobile devices to it, and they can instantly start diving in to this seminary on a stick in the middle of Africa.
That's amazing.
Or the middle of some remote area, and we just got to go drop a few of these and have a broader impact. It doesn't have to really be just like one thumb drive, one person.
Right.
Now it's like these little like
Community
very
hub,
economical, Raspberry Pi type devices. They're like they're less than $100, and have some major impact of teaching teachers.
And by the way, this is one of the things, that's what Mike's heart was. It was in the people. So again, we're doing this to be able, and again, it's just the Great Commission, right? This is what we're doing. We're following the Great Commission. And I'm just so happy and just so blessed to know that I was able to, that zeal that Mike had and that vision that Mike had rubbed on me, right? So I want everybody on the other side of the screen to get that good infection, that be able to stand with the projects that we have and to understand that we're going to have challenges. We already had a ton of spiritual warfare coming our way. And I know that there are going to be naysayers. There are going to be people that are not going to see that what we are doing is going to be as effective or as profitable. But then again, ultimately, it's Jesus's opinion, the one that matter, right? So we want to be able to be unified in this and to make the best out of it. And now we're almost 2 hours into this stream, so we have 2 more minutes, and then we're gonna wrap it up. So before we do that, I'm gonna ask a couple of last few questions that we have. Next question will be: will the Miklat app still be available and working? So we have a Miklat app, right? For people that don't know, you can find it. It's through Subsplash in the church app. I have a great relationship with them, so we might be able to work something out and maybe give it a facelift and revamp it and just rebrand it as a Michael S. Heiser Foundation. I know the guys at Subsplash very, very well, and I know that they handle all the updates on the Apple Store and the Google Store. So we will be able probably to continue to do that and give it a good facelift. What will be of Memra? I think that you mentioned something, Drina. So just refresh that, because I don't think I heard it.
Yeah, Memra was a side pet project that Mike did, just separate from all the other things that he did. So it is something that was really directed by Mike. Nobody else can really do it. I do have all of the files and the information. It's just figuring out how to start that up again and finding someone to facilitate it. It is on my mind. It's not foremost in my mind, but it is a question that I get frequently, and so I will be working with someone to get that available again. So.
Okay, so last question, and I think this is an important one, and Drina, I think that you can answer this. Will French Bob continue?
Yes, it will actually. I just got some emails this week saying that they're going to be starting up again. So all of Mike's set is still in Dallas,
Right.
and all of his props, all that stuff there. Brian Cole, who is a videographer, donated all of his time to
yeah.
edit. He is working with Judd Burton. And I forget the other guy's name. Do you know?
I don't know the name, but yeah, those guys are amazing. They're
Yeah, so
guys.
Judd just contacted me even today. So that is going to be going again. I don't know when I
Yeah.
can get the information and maybe put it in a newsletter, but
Yeah.
it will be continuing.
Yeah. All right. So with that being said, just gonna by way of summary, I know that a lot of people came in here late. So we talked about all the new projects that we have. We try to answer some questions, some easy questions and not so easy questions. And again, what we want to do is we want to make sure the Michael S. Heiser Foundation thrives, and we want to make sure that we do this in order to bring more people to the feet of King Jesus and to strengthen their faith. The DCW have incredible theological value and incredible apologetics value. And on top of that, that's the way, because that way we can do missions and evangelism. So we wanted to do that. If you want to help financially, you can still go to mclot.org and help that way. But the number one way you can help is by sharing this content. We still put daily content across all Mike's platforms. And also, the next best thing that you can do, and probably the most foundational thing that you can do, is pray for us. Pray for Drina, pray for her family, pray for Mel, pray for Ron, pray for Mike, pray for myself, and everybody involved here, that we will have the strength to continue to withstand the attacks of the enemy and to continue to do what God has called us to do, is to know him intimately and to make him known. And with that being said, Drina, Ron, Mike, Mel, just go ahead on and say a few words to the audience, and then we can wrap it up.
Thanks for your love of Mike, and thanks for your love of the Bible and the desire to see people know, as you say, Jorge, to know God and to make him known. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, this is all about Jesus. Like, we're not trying to point to Mike. Mike was pointing to Jesus. That's what this is all about. That's all we care about here.
I think that in the end, when Mike passed, that same day was also the same day with my own sister Ruth passed. A few days later, it dawned on me that they're probably getting some sort of like initial welcome day to the Divine Council training, and I could just imagine that they were having a conversation and they just simply like, wait, what was your last name? And just slowly come to this realization, like, wait, we know the same guy, and and it just brought a smile to my face to think that I know that Dr. Heiser was looking forward to being in the council. I think my sister was probably more surprised all of a sudden that she's now part of all this and the crazy story of what is going on. And so, if anything, I'm appreciative of what Mike had done and just really expanding the vision of what God's kingdom, his overall family is. That it's not just us human beings and we get to enjoy heaven, but that ultimately heaven and earth are going to become one again. And we get to be part of that beautiful vision of what God's family was meant to be. And so that, if anything, I've always appreciated what Mike pointed to and just reminded me of.
Thank you, Mike. Drina?
And listen, I am so grateful for all of you. Just the outpouring of just love and prayers and cards, and most of you are still donating to McLot, and I appreciate that so much, because we haven't given you anything this past year, and the fact that you are still supporting Mike and his legacy and just being patient, it means the world to me. And we are trying to just honor Mike and bring bring you some fresh things, and I'm excited about it, and I just am so appreciative of you all and your love for Mike, your love for Jesus, your love for, the Bible and the kingdom, and it means the world to me. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who are on the other side of the screen. We love you. Continue to fight the good fight. Continue to share this amazing teaching of the Divine Counselor worldview, which is the biblical worldview. And thank you for all your efforts. We love you. We want to continue to do this, and we couldn't do it without you. God bless. Bye-bye.
What is that?
That thing fell.
Well,
Well, Mike, it was good talking to you.